Fight the Good Fight. I'm here with a guest that I have had a number of times in the past, always having been a popular guest. This is Allan LaVigne. Allan, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everyone out there.
Absolutely. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I just want people to know Allan was a member. I mean, in terms of the UFO phenomenon, this is just an amazing thing. Allan was an original investigator. Should I say original? Was an investigator for the organization APRO, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, run by James and Coral Lorenzen, legendary organization. Allan was really one of their number one go-to guy during the later years of that organization. So he's got a very good background in the UFO subject going back many years. And he has an equally, if not even more impressive background in the realms of security. He did work for many years with Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security, which maybe we can talk about sometime. And then also, you've got a really great background in the creation of Hollywood special effects. You're a jack of several trades, sir. And I guess people should know that on a private level, Allan and I do correspond a bit. He's always a wealth of knowledge as a member of my website, Richard Olin Members, but also just hitting me up with all kinds of information coming from a lot of different sources. And I'm always grateful
Sure.
for that. And Allan, I just thought it would be a nice thing to have you here. It's getting basically the end of the year. 2023 has been a significant year in the UFO field. And I thought it would be nice to chat with you about it. I think you've got interesting insights that I would like to hear, and I think people would like to hear. So how about we do that?
It'd be my pleasure. Be my pleasure. And of course, what's on everyone's mind here as we end the year and begin 2024 is, of course, the UAP disclosure bill
Exactly.
that just went through Congress, and a lot of people are disappointed about how that turned out. But looking at the thing from a 30,000-foot overview, we have to think about how we got here in the first place. Grush has really doubled down and been very clear about uh, something that the general American public doesn't know, which is we've been in a Cold War concerning these recovered materials for quite some time, maybe 70, 80, maybe even 100 years. He's going back before the 1930s, he claims that we had some knowledge of this. And as within any war, you win that war by keeping your secrets and learning the secrets of your enemies.
Mhm.
But secrecy is a double-edged sword. Uh, like anesthesia or X-ray, if you don't use enough, it's no good. If you use too much, you're going to kill the patient. And there's been so much secrecy applied to the UAP, UFO phenomenon over the years by the military industrial complex and everyone involved in it, that the patient is now on life support. And the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Mhm.
Because over the years, these programs were so secret and so compartmentalized, and people didn't write things down. So when someone passed away, everything they knew passed away with them. There was no paper trail. So we come
Now,
into
I want to ask
2024.
you, can I just challenge you a little bit about that? I'm not even disagreeing with that, but how confident can you be in that assessment that there is no paper trail within, let's say, the black budget world of special access programs dealing with UFO, UAP, reverse engineering, alien bodies, biologics, and so forth? Why
Yeah,
would
let, let
you
me
why would you
let
make
me
that statement?
let me uh, drill down on that. I would say primarily it's not like a typical budget or a
Mhm.
typical project where you would write everything down. There definitely
Right,
is some
right.
documentation,
Mhm.
but if you look like most late 1990s with Colonel Corso, he
Mhm.
said the same thing that I've said many times. You just don't take notes on this kind of stuff because it'll come back to bite you. When he passed away, I've never heard anything. Uh, what happened to the materials that he had there at the Pentagon? Where'd they go? Did they go somewhere? Were they passed off to somebody else?
He
Um,
That's interesting. By the way, I don't even disagree with what you're saying there. I just thought I want to get that fleshed out. I think in Corso's case, when he wrote that book, that was 1997, 25
Yeah,
years ago. He, I don't
the
recall,
same
did he
year
give the
as the
names?
Wilson memo.
Well, it was the same year that Wilson met
Yeah,
with Stephen
yeah,
Greer. Maybe I think we might want to talk about that a little bit, actually.
yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. Did Corso state which companies he gave those materials to, or did he leave that out? I think he might have left that out. I don't recall company names in that book.
I did hear a few names, but not in the book. I think
Yeah,
he spoke to George Knapp and Alexander and Valet about some of the companies that he handed off to, and he said
undoubtedly,
that they,
undoubtedly.
yeah, he said to them that they were primarily told this was Russian tech that they were
Mhm.
looking at. So that's the whole problem with this. You could be in a back engineering program right now, not know. You could be looking at
Right, right, right,
materials
right.
that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the challenges coming into this is there's so much ambiguity about who knows what and what information is out there.
Mhm.
And although the American people really started to get brought up to steam this last summer with Grush's testimony in front of Congress, this goes back years uh, when this started to leak out. Too many people knew. And by the time that we'll be coming into February here, which will make the third year since the Select Intelligence Committee was fully briefed, not just by Grush and his team, but also by the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, the 40 eyewitnesses. So they had firsthand knowledge of documents, photographs, signals information, um, and videotape from satellites, all this information. So you're talking about, if you include the 23 members of the committee, their lawyers, their staffers, uh, the UAP task force, lawyers and staffers, Rush's team, the inspector general's team, you have a couple hundred people that for the last 3 years have known every detail about this, including
Within
Schumer.
and around connected to Congress, essentially, is what I
Yes,
think you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what I was
And in
sharing
fact,
with you,
can we push it back 1 year earlier? I'm thinking that was when Eric Davis, I think at the behest of Chris Mellon, if I'm not mistaken, Eric Davis in
mhm,
2019. So that would be 4 years ago and almost five, I suppose, in which he briefed members of Congress and perhaps the Senate on advanced technologies, crash retrievals, and the like. So this has been a building case here
it's
within.
been a building thing. Yeah. And also the anger's been building within in Congress and the Senate as
Mhm.
they learn more and more. And I've said this in my posts. Stealing from Congress is like stealing from the mob. They will not
Mhm.
forgive you. They will not let this go. Um, a lot of people are disappointed that the bill didn't go through, but I have a different take on this.
Mhm.
Not that I wasn't cheering for it to go through. I go, boy, if you can get this through, it's great. But
Right.
99.9% of bills never get through the Congress. They're more communication. They're more about debate, bringing subjects forward to educate the other members of Congress and the Senate, to engage the American people. And what Schumer was saying, in no uncertain words, the military industrial complex, we know what you're doing. We know where the bodies are. We know who has this materials. And this is what's going to happen to you. You have 100 days to come clean, or we're going to go in and take your stuff. And we're going to take the money that you took from us.
Mhm.
And we're going to, that's why it was so detailed. They were sending a message. We know what you're doing. We know what you have.
So it might
And
be one way to look at it might be uh, a trial balloon, but another might be a shot across the bow. Maybe those are
well,
two
it
ways of
definitely
looking at it.
was. Yeah, it definitely was a shot across the bow. They don't
Mhm.
need any of that stuff codified. As a couple of examples, like the presidential panel to declassify materials, Biden could do that tomorrow. He doesn't need a codified law coming out of Congress to do that. He can do that as the executive at any time. He has that capacity to do
To
that.
declassify, I think anything.
Anything.
Is there? I don't think
Yeah.
there's. to that.
And so he could take 9 people, he could take a dozen people, he could handpick them, he could ask somebody within his cabinet to pick them,
Yeah, but
and
of course,
impanel them at any time.
no precedent has ever done that, and certainly he has
No,
not.
but but he certainly has the power to do it.
Mm,
This, oh, you only have a need to know. No, 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 wait a sec. Because they did that to Harry Reid. When Harry Reid tried to get into the programs, they said, well,
mm.
you don't have a need to know. Well, the Pentagon works for Harry Reid. It's not the other way around. They're paid employees, and I'm sure you, as a UFO historian, will recall when they tried to keep Eisenhower out of the Nellis Air Force Range, Area 51, we call it now.
Mm.
And he said, "You either let me on there, or I'm going to bring the Army in there, and we'll open it up that way."
Well, that was from an interview that I did with a man who's no longer alive, and that is exactly what he said. It's a little bit of a contested claim. I mean, let me just say that, but yes, he did say that actually to me.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's the power that the executive branch has.
yeah.
Harry Reid didn't have to take no for an answer. Uh, but it's not like we don't have anything else to do.
Well, I don't know.
You know?
I'm still going to challenge because I mean, you go back. It was about 30 years now that the Roswell case really was getting a lot of traction. Early 1990s was a big time for Roswell. And this was when New Mexico Representative Stephen Schiff, on behalf
Yes,
of his constituents,
who
actually
died
tried to look into.
mysteriously of cancer.
He sure did. And before that happened, he got so much obstruction from the U.S. Air Force and from the military in general. And they basically overtly blew his staffers off, blew him off, obstructed. He talked about this. He got nowhere with it. They erased, destroyed records that should not have been destroyed. So, they acted with total impunity. And I just wonder, you're saying there's total legal authority on the part of the president and Congress to get this information out. But I really wonder, is that how it is in practice? Because it certainly wasn't that way in practice 30 years ago. And it doesn't ever seem to have been that way in practice that I can see. So I'm not saying you're
Ask
wrong, but I don't know
MacArthur.
if it's really going
Yeah,
to work out like that.
yeah. Ask MacArthur if you piss off the president, what's going to happen to you. I mean, when MacArthur pissed off Truman,
Mhm.
he just said, "Okay, you're fired." That's it.
It happened.
And
Yes.
yeah. Now, what I heard about Clinton is that he actually felt intimidated by the military-industrial complex, and that's why he didn't push it further. I've heard some conversation that he even felt that he might be physically threatened if he pushed the situation.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's true or not. I think you'd have to have a lot of balls to threaten a president overtly, their physical safety, if they press something like this. But
Well,
you
one
know,
of them was taken out in
they
an assassination. So it can happen.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely out there,
Mhm.
but you can't kill off the entire executive staff. If there was a wave, hey,
Mhm.
you go to the Joint Chief and say, I want this information. We want it declassified. If not, we're going to get the Vice Chief staff to be taking your spot.
Okay.
It just depends how much they want to press it. Like I said, it's not like it's the top thing on their mind. They have a couple wars going on.
Right.
They have the reelection coming up, so there's a lot on their mind. But in no uncertain words, Schumer was firing at them. Schumer is a very feisty guy.
Mhm.
He's been in the Senate for years, and he's not someone who would be threatened by the military-industrial complex. He knows them really well, and you recall his warning to Trump: "Hey, if you screw with these guys, they have every which way to Sunday
It
to
is
come
six
back after."
days till Sunday to take. He said that on the Amy Goodman Democracy Now program when Trump was
Mhm.
newly elected. He said that, and he was talking about the CIA, by the way, and how they
Yeah.
would take Trump down. She said nothing in follow up to that. It was kind of a shocking thing. She just kind of let that slide. Anyway, you're
Well,
making.
people
I
that
don't
have
want to
been
cut you. Well, I feel like
no,
I'm
go
cutting
ahead.
off your points here, and I should really let you continue. You're arguing that the executive and Congress do have tools at their disposal to get this job done. That is in terms of UAP disclosure. Am I reading you right on that?
Oh, absolutely. they don't need to codify eminent domain. Eminent domain already exists
Mm.
as a tool within government when it's concerning national security and public safety. If you, Richard Dolan, were on a stroll through the park and find a spent nuclear warhead, Russian warhead, brought it home, and said, "Oh, I'm going to back engineer this," I guarantee you, if you got on the internet or on your site, said, "Hey, I found a nuclear warhead, I'm back engineering it," you'd have guys all dressed in black with guns at your door, before next sunrise, taking it away from you. And you go like, "Well, hey, I took this home in an Uber, I spent my own money." That makes absolutely no difference. These are nuclear materials. They're
Mm.
potential weapons of mass destruction. They're not going to let you keep them, period.
Okay.
They're going to go in there, they're going to take them.
Well, how is that?
And
How
I'm
is
sure
that the same as ET tech, which everyone has known? It's been an open secret, I think, for decades and decades, that private contractors do have ET tech. And including intact flying saucers. I think I think it's
I
been
really,
known. So do you,
I really believe
yeah.
that when you talk about Congress and the Senate, which are turning over every few years, some
Mhm.
people,
Right.
like Biden had been there 50 years, maybe he'd heard of it. But again, it's not something they're going to drill down like, "Oh, yeah, oh, yeah." They don't want to get involved in that. It's not that they're going like, "Really? Is that really what's going on?"
Right.
Um, what perked their ears up is, "Hey, we've been stealing from you for 80 years. We've been screwing with the budget." After the fifth failure of the Pentagon be audited, and they admit that they don't know where 50% of their assets are, you got to go like, "Okay, enough is enough." Okay, we're at the point where the dollar is really in danger.
Mhm.
We can't meet budget, and you guys are screwing around with billions of dollars. You can't even account for it. And now we hear you're stealing from us, and you have been for years. Like I said, you're stealing from us,
Okay.
and they're
Well,
going to come after you.
it's an interesting battle, and I appreciate you saying this, because a lot of times it's very easy for us to just look at Congress and think all of them are tools of that establishment, and that means the military-industrial intelligence complex. I do think many of them are, and in fact, many of those senators um, had the bill gutted for that reason. So there's a lot of
Like
a lot
Turner
of
and
that's right, members of Congress, and I'm sure this is of both parties, who are very much in line with what the defense establishment wants. Um, like
yeah,
you, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, go on.
It's granulated. You have individuals who are beholding to for their campaign donations from these companies, but as the Senate and Congress are the holders of the purse strings, we you have to really look at who's wagging the tail here. Who's really in charge. All they have to say is, and Schumer made it very clear: you don't come clean in 100 days, we're going to take your money away. We're going to stop funding it. And we know who's being funded for this.
You
That
said
all
is it
came out.
1 or 300 days? I'm trying to think. When the bill
It was
passed,
100 days. It was 100 days. It
so
wasn't 300.
100
It was
days. Let,
100.
let me just be clear. Maybe you can explain this to me and to the listeners. So after 100 days of signing the NDAA, which was just signed yesterday, I guess, right? Uh, are you saying that it's 100 days for what exactly?
Well, that was the threat if the entire bill had been passed.
Yeah.
They said, either you come clean in 100 days, or we're going to do this and this and this. We're going to exercise eminent domain. We're going to go in and get this stuff, and we're going
I
to
thought it was
defund you,
300. I
etc.
thought it was 300 days. No.
Well, it was coming up. Uh, it would have been coincide with the next election, October or so. So I think
Yeah.
that's not 300 days. Yeah, we're close to
Well, it would actually be. It
whatever.
would be
They
close to 300 days.
would it be 300 days? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be close to that.
Would be.
But they're drawing a line in the sand. They're explaining to them what's going to
Oh
happen
yeah.
to them if you don't comply. It's I don't think Schumer ever expected the entire bill to be passed in its form. And like I said,
Mm.
they don't need to. Eminent domain is always a tool there. Now, I know, and I
Okay. Yeah.
sympathize with
Explain
these
this.
people that have.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Mhm,
I keep. Maybe it's a
sure.
connection.
No.
Definitely explain this, because eminent domain, for people who don't know, is the power basically by the government to just essentially expropriate your property. It's often used in terms of real estate. If you live in the wrong area, they want to build a road, the state or the government, federal can take that property. They'll give you what they think is a fair price, and you have no recourse. That is eminent domain, and that power was explicitly embedded in the UAP Disclosure Act vis-a-vis private contractors. That has been removed, but you
And,
are saying the government still has that power.
well,
More important.
absolutely. And I've heard like Ross Coulter was sharing, and he's an attorney, he has a law license, and he was sharing, oh, that'll have problems in court. Not for something they got illegally. I mean, it'd be one thing if they went through there, and there are methods, even within secret compartmentalized, non-acknowledged programs, to bid these things out. They didn't do that. The Pentagon simply handed this stuff over, and in some cases, apparently, these private contractors went and got it and brought it back. Now you say, oh, okay, well, that's finders keepers. No, you've only got three places you can find this stuff. It's either they found it on federal land, public property,
Mhm.
or in another country. You don't have the right to take it from any of those places without permission. You can't go into some foreign country, grab something, and take it back. Again, as a UFO historian, you recall the incident that occurred with Mexico, where it said that American forces went into Mexico to retrieve a UFO and came into conflict
Mhm.
with Mexican forces trying to recover it. Uh, if a private company uses their own, special forces team to go do, that's totally illegal. You don't have any protection against that. Again, they look at these things as both either nuclear materials or weapons of mass destruction. Think of a gravity amplifier. Okay, what can you do with that? Well, heck, if it works like Bob Lazar says, you could simply use that gravity amplifier to open up a time space well and drop an entire army out to the asteroid belt. You could crush tanks like they were tinfoil, or sink an entire fleet out
Hmm.
in the ocean. They are not going to let that type of weaponry, yeah, just in somebody's private garage, or some company's thing. I mean, up until this point, it wasn't. I don't think a lot of them really believed it existed. They had heard about it. And are like, really? Is this really a thing? Now
Well, what
they've
they're going to
had
run,
the evidence.
they're running into. Yeah, I think it's probably true that a lot of members of Congress did not think that this existed. It was off limits for discussion. It was too ridiculous, and so on. Yeah, no problem with that. So now they're becoming wise to it, but I think they're also becoming wise to the fact that there's a lot of collusion within the federal government itself for this system, for this privatization of the secrecy. Which, by the way, I just want to point out, I have talked about the privatization of the UFO secret for more than 20 years. So I think
Yeah,
it's,
well, the
yeah,
initial plan was to keep it uh, from scrutiny, not just from Congress, but from Freedom of Information Act,
absolutely,
that
absolutely.
came up in the
And
70s.
but the point is, there's
And
been a lot
so
of
it sounded like a
collusion.
good idea, but it's illegal. It's illegal. And you have no protection against something that you've done illegally, none whatsoever.
I often call it
And
legal illegality, because they've made it legal. I mean, in practice, this has been going on for essentially an entire human lifetime. This segueing out of the technology to private industry to keep it secret, to keep it safe, and all of that. So I don't know. There might be some
and
covert
and
legal mechanisms we don't know about. I mean, I wonder.
if it was done the way that Rush is alluding has have been done, it was not through the regular bidding system. They can say, well, we had it on this heading, that it's they're not going to take it to court. They don't want to take it to court because that opens them up to discovery. Everybody has to be uh, go in, explain what they're doing, and they don't want that. It was just like oh WikiLeaks there. They don't want that to go to trial. They don't want that open to
No,
discovery.
right,
Yeah.
right. A lot of
And
sensitive information.
it's the same with this. If they go like, oh, you can't take our stuff, we paid for it and we went and got it. okay, we'll settle this in court.
Okay,
And
so
they don't want to go there.
let's grant everything that you've said here, which so in other words, the argument that the federal government, president and Congress, we're going to group them together here, have the ability, they've got the power to force a disclosure if they want it. Fair enough. Let's just say that that's true. Do they want it? Even do the members of Congress want it?
Well,
When
I'll
you
tell
just
you,
mentioned,
how.
yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, what you were just saying, excuse me, a little earlier, which I think is exactly right in terms of the potential to weaponize some of this technology. So we've had the military has been on top of this. The private industry has been looking into 70 plus years of anti-gravity research, undoubtedly material science research, undoubtedly weapons derivations from this tech. That's a lot of research that they've done that they do not want to give up. I'm sure they don't want to give that up. And so what
Well,
makes
I
us
can share
think that
how
the president would be okay with giving it up?
this is how they'll do it. And we've the last couple of months, a lot of people talked about what type of disclosure. Are we going to have a controlled disclosure or a catastrophic
Right.
disclosure? Uh, we're going to have a disclosure. I call it euphemistically Casablanca style disclosure. I don't know if you're familiar with that scene in Casablanca where the gendarme goes into Rick's establishment and goes, I'm
Oh,
shocked,
yes.
shocked, I tell you, that to find gambling
Gambling at
going on
this
here.
institution.
Here's
I'm
your
shocked.
winnings, sir. You know, uh, that's that is what I call scapegoat disclosure, and I believe going forward that's what's going to happen. At some point, in probably within the next year, someone's going to get raided, and the federal government is going to go, "Oh, we're shocked that back engineering is going on here." They're going to collect all the stuff. They'll take a broken tail light off a UFO and show that to the cameras. Go, look what they had, and here's a dead toenail from an alien body. Oh my God, we had no idea they had this stuff. And we're going to look into this, and we're going to get deeper
Yeah.
into this, and we'll get back to you as soon as we learn, because they may have more stuff. That puts a lid right on it right there. You've answered all the questions, because the follow-ups are, well, what else might they have? Well, we don't know. We have no idea. We just found this. We didn't even believe they had it, but they did. Well, we
Well,
were
yeah,
shocked.
well, that is
And
definitely one possibility that they'll try, but is it actually realistic? Are people going to buy that? I mean, I think 99% of the people are going to
but
be like,
they don't
"Tell me a
care.
line of BS." No one will believe it.
They don't care. And if you haven't been watching the last 3 years, you see they don't care whether you believe them or not.
I
They
agree with
don't
you.
care whether the general public believes aliens exist or there are UFOs. You know, you get 50,000 sightings worldwide every year. They don't care what you see. They just care about not going to the Pentagon doesn't want to go to Leavenworth, and these guys in the industrial complex, they don't want their businesses scuttled. Imagine how are they going to explain to their investors, their stockholders, how they hid this for all these years? What are they going to say to the Federal Trade Commission? Do you think that the knowledge that Lockheed has gravity amplifiers would change the value of their stock? Absolutely, it would change it. And that's something they would have to come clean with. Yeah, we have
Well,
all this
that could
stuff. And they don't
significantly
want
enhance it, don't you think? It would, uh,
it
couldn't it?
yeah, it would definitely change it. It would definitely change it. And that's where I come to another type of disclosure that could happen. And that's a state disclosure by foreign power. Um, One of
Yes.
the things I synopsize is, and this could happen tomorrow. So Putin can get on at the podium and go like, "Oh, yesterday in the in northern region of Ukraine, we came across Ukrainian forces trying to smuggle something out. We captured it. It was a fully intact UFO they were trying to take to the west, and oh my goodness, it had bodies in and everything, and we captured it. The Ukrainians got away, unfortunately, but we've got it, and we're inviting engineers and industrialists and from all over the world to come to Russia and help us determine what this is." Now, the reality might be that they've had this thing since the 1950s. Who's to say they didn't? But you think what that would do for the Russian stock market? And it would go right through the roof, and people would be beating a door to their to Russia to work on this stuff, and they can definitely control what they work on, and they're going to get the lion's share of whatever comes out of that. And so that's certainly a possibility. And if I was the United States government, I wouldn't wait too late, because someone is going to get that same idea, go like, oh hell yeah, we can control this. And
Okay,
do
so
you really?
let's pause there.
Well,
Oh no,
sure.
go finish your thought. Finish your thought. So
Well,
sorry.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
everyone's going like, well, they want to keep the secret because they're developing weapons. Really, really, are these weapons are so secret they can't even use them as a threat. So what good are they? I mean, the real reason they want this is these are golden geese. These are money cows. They
Mhm.
just keep shoveling money at this, and that's what they don't want to lose. They're never going to use a gravity amplifier as a weapon against Russia or China. It's not. They don't even use many of the technologies that we've had for 10, 20, 30 years,
Mm.
that you're on the back burners. It's just a cash cow, and they don't want that money to stop. So the fact that, we could have used this for a weapon, you've got plenty of news.
So
Okay, if
let
you
me ask
want
you
to
this
destroy the
question.
world, you can destroy it 3 times
Have we
over.
gotten to a pivot in the whole long history of the UFO cover-up? I'm going to say UFO here, where up until now, in the past, the downside, the risks always seem to outweigh positives that would come out of it. But is it possible that from a private corporate point of view of making money and increasing shareholder value and stock value, uh, is it possible that we're getting to a point where it might be considered to be in the interest of an organization like Lockheed, for example, or Boeing or Raytheon uh, or General Electric, or to say we've got this technology and let's make some more money.
Yes, if they can do yes, if they can do anything with it. The reason Lockheed wanted to give this to Bigelow is they're going like, this is a hot potato. We've had it for years, and it's just been all we've done is spent money hiding it. We haven't made any progress. As I've shared also in my post, it's like giving a nuclear reactor to ancient Rome. What good is it going to do to anybody?
Mhm.
You can't. Wow, we know this is really important. It's got all this stuff, but we can't make heads or tails of it, and it becomes an albatross. So Lockheed wanted to give it here. Bigelow, you take it.
Do you know
We
this, or
don't
is this
want.
your
And
theory? Is this a theory, or do you know?
oh no, that was Keller has spoken about that. Grush has spoken about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, the whole ATIP program, the $21 million,
Mhm.
and Bigelow refitting his security protocols and stuff at that warehouse in Las Vegas was for the express intention of transfer this whatever it is Lockheed has to Bigelow. That was the entire plan. That was what the $21 million was for. But then the Pentagon or whoever is controlling this within the Pentagon said, no, we're not. You can't give it to them. And the reason being is they were afraid that, hey, first off, they're going to get their money cut off at the Pentagon, that they were giving Lockheed to work on this stuff. And they could be in trouble if if it goes upline and they find out, hey, these guys have been stealing money from us. So they
Well,
go like,
what
no,
did
no,
they
no,
get? Did they get a
Lockheed
sign
cannot
off?
give it away.
Did they get a sign off from Lockheed to do this? Did Grush or Colm Kelleher
Yep,
say that
the
Lockheed
Lockheed,
agreed?
yeah, yeah, Lockheed, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Lockheed
that one
wanted to
went right
give it to
by me.
Bigelow.
So thank you for telling me that.
Uh, Yeah, yeah. Keller was on 2 podcasts just this last week talking about.
Wow.
Grush has talked about it, and they shared that what happened because they didn't get the transfer. They go like, oh, okay, we got this $21 million. Okay, we'll write a bunch of papers on applications and
Right.
research. I think there were 50 papers that were written. That's what they ended up spending the money on, and because $21 million was never used for the transfer of
Yeah.
the materials. So Lockheed wanted to get rid of it, but CIA or whoever it was who's controlling them said, no, you keep it. You
You're keeping the
can't
program.
give it away because they're afraid that that's going to go
Okay.
upline and bite them in the butt. And so I'm certain when they hear things, the private industry people hear things like, "Hey, they're killing people for disclosing this stuff." They're going, "Oh hell, we don't want to get involved in that. If they're doing targeted assassinations and we could be involved in that, that's not going to be
Mm.
good for us. We need to get unload this stuff and just we want to get out of it. And we've never developed anything from this. All it's been is a pain in our butt. We're hiding it in this warehouse and it's costing us millions of dollars."
Mm. I will just
So
add that
I,
I know of I am certain that I know of at least one instance directly of a scientist who was murdered as a result of this program many, many years ago. My wife Tracy and I know the daughter of this individual, and we know his story. And I'm going to leave it there for the moment, but we're not done investigating this one. But I do think he was
oh,
murdered.
you have a lot of suspicious deaths surrounding
Yeah,
this subject. Like the New Mexico senator, you got John Mack, who was, run over. And you have Forrestal,
James
went down
Forrestal, I
17th
do think
store
was certainly murdered.
window. Yeah, and yeah, there. If you look at all the details of that investigation, clearly he was thrown out that window.
Yeah,
Um,
was.
so
I
yeah,
don't
so
think there's any
you
question.
have a and back before the church commission, this type of wet work was common. It was common. Is it still done today? Well, Russia's saying, yes, they're still doing this kind of
Mhm,
stuff.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So that's going to make a lot of people pucker, people that aren't highly vested in it, and they don't want to be tied to it, particularly if you're a commercial entity. They don't want to, oh yeah, people were killed as a result of this. Um, that's a bridge too far for a publicly traded company. And so, but they might be, afraid of the military aspect of it as well. That they might be, hey, you either shut up or you're going to end up going out a 17-story window too.
Mm.
So there's a lot of fear factor involved in this. But the way to solve it for the executive branch is, like I said, that scapegoat disclosure. Go in, take it, get a new warehouse, and just, oh, we're looking at researching it. Yeah, here's this bump that came off one. We don't know how it works, and they'll just show you little bits and pieces. I mean, you saw that with all the stealth programs. By the time the first stealth fighter came out, it was already been in service like for 15 years. It was almost obsolete at that point. So, and just think of all this
Well,
stuff.
actually, when the stealth fighter was introduced, I believe that was around the time of the Gulf War, so 1990, 91. No, it had been, I think the stealth fighter had been operational from the early 80s. I think it took its first flight 1982, 83, didn't it?
But
Maybe 89, 9,
it
10.
was under development. Oh yeah,
Oh,
for
yeah, it
15
was
years
under,
before that.
that's right.
Yeah,
It was under
yeah,
development. They had
yeah.
the have blue tests out in Nevada back in the 70s. Okay, yeah, it
I
had been
had a
worked on for quite some
family
time.
friend. He's passed away now, Tom Merrill, who worked on the SR-71 back
Hmm.
in the 60s. He worked at the Nellis Range. He
Yeah.
got my parents their job at Hughes Aircraft, and he used to share, things probably they shouldn't have shared about it. So it was
Yeah.
it's interesting, we talk about AI and how advanced we are now. They built that plane in 14 months, the SR-71, with just slide rules and
Unbelievable.
drafting things. Yeah, and you think, oh, were they smarter then than they are now? Because how do you do this? You go from
Yes, I think they
concept to
were.
yeah, I absolutely agree.
I
So
think they were smarter.
uh, yeah, yeah. So this stuff, this is not something they're predisposed to roll out anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to see them. Oh yeah, here's a flying saucer. Yeah, this is what we got from Lockheed. This is what it looks like. Blah blah blah, and they take it around the parking lot for a spin. You're not going to see that
So what do you
any
think
more
will
than
happen? What's your prediction?
my prediction is that
Yes.
within the next year you're going to see a raid, and they're going to take out a few trinkets. This is what we found, and we're looking into it. And
Like a raid of like Lockheed, maybe?
Lockheed or Raytheon, or could be even a foreign facility, some black lab. Hey, I mean, what are the rumors in Ukraine? There are like 20 some black labs in Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're working on who the hell knows.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
Alan. It's not
Mhm.
going to happen in Ukraine. I mean, it's not
No,
going to happen there. The
no, but
U.S.
I'm just saying
Congress
that
is not
we,
going to go and do that on
yeah,
Ukraine.
but we have, that's just an example
And
of
I
how
don't.
many laboratories can be set up in a war zone. Imagine the friendly countries that
Yeah.
have
Okay.
labs set up. I tell you, there are friendly countries all over the world that have laboratories set up like this that are outside uh, the Congress's preview of what's going on. We knew that from the black sites where prisoners were taken. I guarantee you there's labs all over the world that are open to whatever you want to do, guys. You bring us the money,
Yeah.
you can bring your uh, people. It could be a raid there, or it could be something more high profile here in the United States. But someone's going to get raided because they cannot let them get away with taking this money. It's only going to embolden other bad actors that say, "Hey,
I'm
they've
amazed.
gotten away."
This amazes me to hear this. It's a shocking. It would be an absolutely shocking development if this were to happen. So if it does, you're going to be like the greatest. This will be the most amazing prediction because it's a remarkable. Uh, this would be a real standoff. I guess I agree with your laying out the scenario, like lots of black labs. Black lab, lots of secret laboratories. Black lab is a dog that I once had, but a lot of laboratories that are like off the grid. Yes, I've no doubt that's true, and many of them deal with this subject. But have them raided, that would be an incredible development, and I have a hard
Stuff
time
like this goes
imagining.
on stuff like this goes on every day, all the time. There was just, and I should share that link with you. There was a raid by the FBI on a money laundering operation here in the United States,
Hmm.
and there were safe deposit boxes there by people that had nothing to do with the money laundering, but they took everything in the safe deposit boxes anyway, just because. And so whatever money or jewels or whatever people were just, sincerely storing away, they got all that. Now they got to go to court to try and get it back. It happens all the time. They raided Gibson guitar a few years back because they had rosewood from Madagascar instead of India, where they were supposed to be getting it. So they sent an FBI SWAT team in the dead of night to raid Gibson
Oh, I'm sorry.
guitar.
Yikes.
So
Okay, but that's not a defense contractor. It's a little different.
um, it's much more keeping with what is likely to happen if they find out this defense contractor has gravity amplifiers and radiological materials and dead alien
Hmm.
bodies. You think that's more urgent because you have so many people that know about this now. It puts that at such a high risk. You get 200 people, lawyers, staffers, as well as senators, congressmen. I guarantee you they're going home and telling their family, "Hey, you never guess what I saw in
Okay.
Congress today. I saw pictures of dead aliens. I saw this, I saw that." And you probably have 2 dozen foreign actors, nations that are monitoring their internet, their telephones, they're monitoring their homes. They want to know where this stuff is. And we know from George
Hmm.
Knapp's work in the 1990s that the Russians were monitoring our back engineering programs here in the United States.
Yep.
And we were monitoring them, monitoring the programs. So everybody wants this stuff, and it's not safe to leave it in a warehouse at some private contractor. It's too much of a risk. And it, they're going to want it back. They're absolutely going to
Okay.
want it back.
Well,
They're not going to show everything to everyone, but they're going to want it back. It's too much of a risk to have it out there.
okay. Well, it occurred to me while I was listening to you that maybe the reason that I have resistance to this idea that there will be a raid is that I think I have given up on the idea that the United States is actually operating by rule of law. I don't really think that I believe that. Now, maybe that's an extreme position, and people can correct me here, but uh, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing things that make me believe that
Well,
that is.
this isn't a matter of rule of law. This is self-preservation. This is they want to
What is
they
it?
want their they
Why
want
would
this stuff back,
members of
and they
Congress?
want the well they
be-
want what would be worse is if they don't get control of this stuff and it gets out into the wrong hands. And then everyone's going like, why didn't you tell us? It's much worse. They want to get under their control because they don't trust these guys. What could happen to this material? And they also want their money back. They want to send a message to military industrial complex. You stole from us. You don't get to steal
Right.
from us. We want this stuff back. It's not a matter of they're enforcing a codified law. Uh, we talked about, well, if they got this legally, it'd be harder to use eminent domain. It wasn't hard to go into Gibson Guitar and get their rosewood, and that was such a minor thing.
Mm.
If you're going in to get weapons, oh my God, of course they're going to go in and get them and bring them back. And then they go, okay, we've got this, and now we know what's going on with these things, and we can make sure they don't fall into the Russians' hands or the Chinese hands. They're going to look like heroes. They answer the questions to the American people. Yeah, we got this stuff. We're looking at it. So everyone's happy
Well, there's your
and
scapegoat
everything's under
disclosure.
control.
Scapegoat
Yeah,
scapegoat
exactly.
disclosure. Throw Lockheed under the bus.
Yeah,
Maybe that's what scapegoat
somebody, and
disclosure would be.
that's what they're all afraid of. They know it's coming. Everyone knows, hey, we're little people. They will throw us under the bus in a second. They don't care about it. There's plenty of other people that would take. There are people right
Yeah.
now that are really upset within that complex, military industrial complex, that they weren't given these parts and stuff. They didn't go through the bidding
Well,
process,
we
and they want to sue.
remember the Davis Wilson notes that leaked out in 2019, which you and I were chatting just before we began recording, and you suggested that might have kicked off a lot of this current wave of investigation. And I do wonder, maybe that is true. Maybe that is true.
I believe it. I believe it is. You've had leaks over the years.
Mhm.
You've had David Adair. You've had Bob Lazar. You had Corso. You had
Mhm.
Jesse Marcel. You had all these people leaking it. You had Springfield's opus,
Mhm.
as to all the things that were gathered. And as you saw in your, you were speaking with Tracy about the 1974 Carr's dissertation on alien body recoveries and stuff. And he was talking about the Aztec recovery.
Yes,
As
Robert
I've
Carr.
shared with you in previous podcasts, we knew in the early 70s about all these recoveries. We knew about Kingman. We knew about Aztec. We knew about Cape Girardeau. We knew about Roswell. And I know Stanton, bless his heart, he was a great guy, great investigator. He's often credited with Jesse Marcel. But I did the film 1979, UFOs Are Real, which had Jesse Marcel's first on camera interview. Stanton was also interviewed at that time, and that's when he first heard about Jesse. But I had already interviewed him before the film. I had interviewed him at least 3 or 4 months before that film ever hit. And Wendell was on it. APRO was the technical advisor for that film. That's 1979. You can look it up. You can see Jesse Marcel. And we all the story that Jesse tells in that on-camera interview was, we already knew it. I literally, when I'm talking to him on the phone, and Jim was there, had him on an old Radio Shack speakerphone setup, and we're listening to him. We go like, we know all this. He didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. We had hoped to learn something that they had found bodies, but he claimed that he had never seen bodies, and he claimed that he had never seen a fully intact craft, that he had only seen pieces and parts and stuff that they
Mhm.
picked up at the scene. Now he seemed to me to be guarded at the time. He had reached out to Jim at APRO. That's how we learned about him. He basically had heard about APRO and he reached out to Jim.
This is
That's
very
where
different
we
from the
first.
story that Stanton Friedman had always stated about meeting Jesse Marcel, which was
Yeah,
that he
it
was doing a
is.
lecture down in Louisiana and
Yeah,
learned
he
that there
it,
was this guy who had a real story. That's what I had always heard.
you can go. It's on YouTube. You can watch that film. UFOs Are Real,
Mhm.
1979, has Jesse's on camera explanation of what happened to him, and Stanton's in the film. That's where Stanton learned about Jesse. He maybe, you know, learned about when he watched the film. Oh, this guy's interesting. And then Jesse came up at another convention. Goes, oh yeah, that's the guy that was in the film. I need to talk to him. But we had already interviewed. prior to that
Wow.
film, which was in '79. And every time
I'm gonna have to
this is
revise my book.
yeah, every time you say, "Oh, Stanton interview," I go like, "Oh, no, he didn't."
Well, hey,
It's just
thank you for
a
clearing
point
that
of
up.
pride, personal pride, because APRO did so much during that time that has been forgotten. As I shared, we knew about all these captures, and we presumed, we didn't know that they were back engineering programs, but
Mhm.
we presumed if they got this stuff, that they were doing something with it.
Of course.
Even if you would ask me at that time, what do you think they're getting at? I go like, probably not much, because you just, even if it was only, even if they're only 1,000 years advance of us, think about it, Richard. If you took a time machine and went back 1,000 years to the Middle Ages, to London, and tried to do anything, you wouldn't be able to speak the language. You wouldn't be able to explain. If,
Exactly.
even if you brought cell phones and computers and stuff, you probably wouldn't last a day before you were being burned as a witch. you know,
No,
uh,
exactly. And
and
and you'd have to have an electrical infrastructure to make the computers work. Like none of that stuff would actually work anyway. I've often wondered about this, and uh, so yeah, I think it would be very difficult for us to figure out the ET tech. Although I've always felt that one of the great advantages of having ET tech, even if you can't figure it out, is it opens your mind and your research to those possibilities. You now know that some form of anti-gravity is possible. You know it's possible because you know it operates in this manner. And so now your job is to figure out how actually it works. So I think there'd be great advantages to having this
Yeah, and Curso
technology.
alerted to that. Yeah, Curso alerted to that in his book. A lot of people say, "Oh, they didn't develop light fiber optics from this stuff, and they didn't develop Kevlar from this." He didn't say that. I mean, he would um, advance in years and stuff. But what I took from that is it inspired these things. They brought in, as you said, they
Mhm.
started thinking in a different way. Hey, this is interesting material here. I've got an idea. If
That's
we
right.
bind, steel to nylon, you know, it would give it greater strength.
Yeah.
This we've suggest something to me that sparks my imagination, and that's what I got from how he was distributing this material and what it was inspiring.
In all
Um,
likelihood, that's how it had to have happened. Like it provided ideas for further
yeah,
research. I have no doubt.
yeah, because when you look at the Betty Barney Hill uh, abduction case, it didn't seem to me from a medical standpoint that they were that far advanced from us. The pregnancy tests, taking the amniotic fluid through a
Yeah, we don't
needle
even
in her
do that
labor.
anymore.
Yeah, they were only maybe like 7, 10 years, advanced that. So, but even that's a lot. If you think of the next 7 to 10 years here on Earth, where our technology will be, it would be almost, if you had it right now, say in front of you, you go like, I don't know what this stuff is.
Well, also
So
keep in mind, if they were another species and if they were truly extraterrestrial, um, maybe they didn't actually have the technology to go right into uh, our biology internally without something intrusive like that. So maybe
yeah,
they needed.
I
It doesn't seem outrageous to me.
no, not at all. In
No.
fact, of the different cases, other than Moody's case, uh, it tells us so much about who at least the Greys were, and what they were doing, and how they acted. And that also takes me to another thing, a little bit off the subject, but in realm of this
Hmm.
mental connection um, kind of thing. I believe it's been so grossly exaggerated over the years, based on my personal experience and based on the investigations that I've done, that they always turn these people into supermen. And I just don't see it. If you drill down on the cases and investigations, I mean, you get into this. And again, I heard Keller say this week, and I hear it all the time. Oh, this has to do with consciousness, and oh my God, you would say that if you were sailing around the world and you came onto an island and you met people you didn't know, you would say, "Oh, this is something to do with consciousness." These are people you never met before because they lived a long way away and their
Mhm.
culture is. I hear it all the time. Oh, this has to do with consciousness, and oh my God, you would say that if you were sailing around the world and you came onto an island and you met people you didn't know, you would say, "Oh, this is something to do with consciousness." These are people you never met before because they lived a long way away and their
Mhm.
culture is strange and you don't speak the same language. Um, yeah, I saw nothing in investigations that I conducted where their mental telepathy power was so great that all of them could do it and they could do anything. What I experienced was more of a hypnotic suggestion rather than what people refer to as a screen memory or something. I
Mhm.
just felt influenced that this guy is my friend and I need to do what he's telling me
Yeah.
to do, which was climb
Right.
down the ladder. It
Right.
wasn't overpowering. And I think if I had a greater strength of will at the time, that I might have been able to shake it off.
Uh-huh.
But it caught me so off guard and I was so surprised. It just was that warm feeling. Oh yeah, but it was more like a hypnotic suggestion. It wasn't making him look
It wasn't
any
total mind
different. He looked,
control.
yeah,
It wasn't
it's
forced.
just like a talented hypnotist were to plant something in your mind and give you a suggestion to
Mhm.
do something or another. And that's was another thing I was sharing about. And again, Keller was bringing up screen memories and talking about ballets in his book. One of the books they talk about, he talks about two people see a UFO. One sees a UFO side of the road. The other person sees a car wreck. They go like, "Well, they were controlling their minds." No,
What do you think?
being an invest, well, being an investigator, I know exactly what happened because you
Mhm.
see this as an investigator, whether it's a crime scene or traffic accident or medical emergency and stuff. You get two witnesses, let's say at a bank robbery, and you say, uh, "What happened?" "Well, they ran out of the bank, got a car, drove away." "Well, what did the car look like?" "Well, it was a blue four-door sedan." The guy standing next to him going, "No, no, no, no. It was a silver van with a sliding door." And then when you finally catch them, it's a black limousine. It's nothing. But in their mind, that's what they saw. And they'll swear
Mhm.
to it in court.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
mind control, it's just the limits of
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 our perception.
perception. And I've
Yeah.
shared this with you before
Mhm.
as a counter surveillance. I've taught counter surveillance. And you'll train your operatives to look for things that they wouldn't normally look for. You train them to be, you've heard of a trained observer.
Yeah.
That's actually a thing. The human mind is not as you're not taking videotape. You don't see with your eyes. You see with your brain. Your
Mhm.
eyes are nothing more than little radar receptors that pick up photons that are bouncing off atomic structures. The picture is created in your mind and it's based on memory. It's not based on what's actually seen. When those photons hit the retina, it's sending a quantum vibration signal to the brain, and the brain goes, "Okay, what is that most like?" Go back to your memory. It's the cat. You recall in Tracy's lecture there in Vegas, she was showing Meta's attempt. Someone was viewing a picture, and then they showed what was going on in their mind based on AI.
This
And
is
the
new
picture was,
technology in which,
yeah,
yeah, they can hook you up with, I guess it's still with wires at this point, but when you're thinking something, though, your thoughts, this is true, guys, can be translated to a screen with a fairly high degree of accuracy.
and
And
you
this is what she was
recall,
talking about. And
yeah,
that's,
and you recall on that
yeah,
picture was fluctuating back and forth. I think it was showing a picture. They were looking at a cheetah and showing, oh, a cheetah sometimes in a black panther, then a tapir. It was going back and forth as it was dialing it in. And your
yeah,
brain does the same thing. You've driven at night, you see something flash across the road, you think, oh, a dog ran across the road. And then in a fraction of a second, you go, no, it wasn't a dog, it was a paper bag. But for that first second, it was a dog. And you saw the
mm,
floppy ears and you saw the eyes and you saw the feet. That was in your brain. That was what you actually saw. A fraction of a second later, you realize, no, it's paperback.
Right.
That's
Well,
how the
you're
brain works.
right.
And
So
if
you're
you have no
saying this isn't my country.
context, yeah, if you have a context, if you have no context for something that you're looking at, like a UFO,
Mhm.
somebody might have a context. Hey, that's a UFO. I saw that on the day the Earth returns. Another person who's never seen a UFO in their life has no context for it. Looks like a car wreck to me, and they'll
Right.
swear to it. They'll swear to it. It's not. They're not controlling your mind. It's just. I don't want to say poor observation, but it's untrained observation. That's why pilots and military personnel are so good because they're trained to look
Mhm.
out in the sky and see things accurately, and they have a reference point for it. In their training, they go over all these airplane silhouettes and all these drone silhouettes, and it's drilled into them
Mhm.
and what to look for on their radar screens and stuff. So they're trained observers. So it's not as likely that they're going to look at something and mistake it for something else. When I say mistaken, because it's part of the brain. Their brain has been trained to look at it accurately and dial in on it. So it's not woo. They're not controlling your mind. There's mind control, no doubt, but it's more on the level of a hypnotic suggestion. And they don't all have it. In the Betty Barney Hill thing, although the leader was speaking to Betty telepathically, she was speaking to him verbally, and the other aliens in the operating room were speaking to him in a language that she didn't understand.
Mhm.
So,
They have an
and
auditory.
if they could have telepathically learned what she was thinking, they would have had to come in with Barney's false teeth and go like, "Hey, what are these?" You know, they've removed his false teeth and go, "We don't know what these are." And the leader telepathically asks Betty,
Mhm.
"What is this?" "Oh, those are false teeth. They come out. We put them in." "Oh, okay." So if he could have read her mind just point blank, he would have even had to ask her the question. He's only communicating telepathically with her, just in a language, telepathic language. You can't read her thoughts. And the other creatures, the other aliens, couldn't read it at all. I believe that the little skull cap he wore, which was he was the only one that wore one, was some type of mechanical device, some type of technology that allowed him. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was sharing about. I always like to get this. It's not that I don't believe in metaphysical. I do. There's a lot of unanswered questions there, but just
Mhm.
because we can't answer them, it doesn't mean that they're gods or they're demons or they're angels or this is something of some figment of consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, it's just we don't understand it, and we don't need to elevate these creatures to godlike status that they're un we can't ever understand, and we can't ever understand the technology. We're bringing ourselves down to what happened with the Incas and the Aztecs when Cortez and the Spanish arrived. Oh, these must be gods.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I agree with that. I think
Yeah,
where we are actually in the last century of our existence, we have just like shot straight up almost on a vertical path, and we are bringing ourselves much, much closer to their plateau level. I firmly believe this. I'm not saying that they won't still have certain advantages over us technologically and scientifically, but I don't know. We're making very, very major strides these days, and I'm inclined to agree with you. Hey, before we
yeah,
wrap this up, I would like
sure.
to just return to our original theme, which was essentially the UAP Disclosure Act. What has happened to it? Um, it has essentially been gutted. I think we can say that pretty accurately, and that's not hyperbole. I think it's been gutted. Um, I think
Written bill. Yeah,
both of us are not surprised by that. Um, I often will look at politics as the art of the possible, and you just have to see, what forces are arrayed against further exposure of this information. And I think those are powerful forces. You focused in this conversation on the power of the federal government, Congress, and also the president as potential players to have a genuine, honest UFO UAP disclosure. And you actually put forward can I call it a prediction? At least opening up to the
I would call it a
possibility,
prediction.
yeah, that there will be a raid.
Yeah,
sometime in
yeah.
2020.
I think shortly after the first of the year here, maybe February around, you're going to have more of these hearings. More people are going to come forward
Yeah,
and
that
share
does
about
seem
what
to be
they
the news.
know, and it's going to force the hand of the federal government to go like, okay, this is getting out of hand. We got
I
too
do
many
think
people talking about this.
I think hearings are the great wild card that we have left. The UAP Disclosure Act, as it exists currently, I don't really see a whole lot of power in that act. I don't really know what. I mean, there's a collection element of UAP reports that's supposed to go to the National Archives. Who really knows how many of them are going to go there? It's not. None of that is clear to me. But hearings, congressional hearings, anything that is comparable to what we saw last summer when we had David Grush make his
Yeah,
incredible statement.
both Jeremy and Corbell and
And George
George
Knapp.
Knapp, yeah, have shared that it's definitely coming. Grush has
Yeah, yeah.
also alluded to that,
No,
and if
I
they
think
don't,
there's a lot of
if
in the rumor mill that this is definitely coming around, and
yeah,
furthermore
and
that
if
the
Congress
witnesses are
doesn't,
powerful.
yeah, if Congress doesn't do it, I can see someone calling a press conference. I really do. If Congress won't do it, because
Well,
you
this
can't
is what
arrest all 40 of
that's
them.
what prompted Congress to do it the first time. Grush comes out, he does an interview with Ross Coulthard, he did an interview with Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal for Politico, and that's what forced. I mean, that's what gave Congress the incentive for having him there. So, yeah,
And
there's some
then as
possibilities here.
yeah, when that happens, the federal government's going to say, okay, it's too much. We've got to stop this. We got to nip this in the bud before it really gets out of control. And we've got someone flying one of these things out of the hangar and buzzing, some major city or whatever. They're going to want to stop. They're going to say, okay, we got to make an example. And they will make an example.
I really
Like I said,
wonder.
they've done it for minor things.
Yeah.
Well, why? I mean, it's self-preservation at this point, like, as I shared. You can't let this get out. It's too important a thing.
Okay, well, you're just saying
I
something
think
different here. So if you can't let it come out,
no,
which I agree that there are forces on that side that will never voluntarily let this secret out. I can't see that. And yet but you have
what
been
I
saying,
mean is when I
yeah.
say, yeah, what I mean by they can't let it out, they can't let it out without controls on it. They will let it out. They'll bring, hey, these are the pieces. You remember when they showed the stealth bomber, they just showed the front of it? They go like, okay,
Oh,
here it
okay.
is. This
Okay.
this just is the front of it. That's all you get to see. And somebody else, somehow they got a picture of the top of it from a private plane or whatever,
Okay.
but they
So
only showed you a little bit. So what they'll do is they'll do this raid. They'll show you a few trinkets. Oh, look what we found. Oh, we had no idea they had this. Oh, we're going to get our best people on this, and we'll be back with you just as soon as we learn more. And then now they've got it back under control, and they can put out a little bit. There'll be people going like, "Well, what happened to that stuff? Where is it? Oh, we're working on it. We got our best guys on it. We're working on it." And they'll show you another a hubcap for one. Oh
several
yeah,
more
look,
years go by.
yeah, yeah.
That I could
But
I
it,
could
it
see
they
that as
get it
being a
back in control.
I could
Yeah.
see that as a strategy. I could. And I mean, for many years I've wondered that I've speculated that we're kind of in a race, the people versus the secret group, the secrecy group, and who will get to the finish line first. And by that, I guess I mean if if the people can get a major leak out before the establishment really has the ability to manage that leak, that could be a great moment of genuinely
Well,
open.
it depends what is real for you, what is confirmation for the average individual that we're not alone and that alien civilizations are visiting us. What is actual
Yeah,
confirmation? What's going to be different from
but
person to person?
but
I
but
believe
but
there's
it's going to
enough out
open
there
up.
already.
It's going to open up a whole can of whoop ass because you
Oh,
can't just
absolutely.
say, oh, it's real, they're here. There's an entire layer upon layer of questions to ask. And so this is to me the
But
real challenge.
if they plead ignorance to those, it like I said, they show you a broken tail light off a UFO. Oh my God, they had this, and they go, well, what about abductions? Oh, we don't know. We don't know about that, but we're looking into it. They
But
can
I think
control
that's going to
all of
be
this stuff.
it's going to be very interesting to see how much they can get away with in terms of pleading ignorance, as you were saying. Oh, I'm shocked. The whole Casablanca scenario. But
Yeah.
how credible will that be? Because it's not just the American public. You've got other governments. You've got foreign diplomats. They're not idiots.
The foreign governments already know they're lying. The foreign governments
That's
already
right, they
know
do.
they know more about this than the American people or the public in general.
So the
So
question will
it's
be, how can they get away with that? It's not just the American, you
what
have
have they
world public, not just an
what
American.
have they got away with in the last 3 years? We could do a whole podcast just on that. I mean, you one unbelievable thing after another. You go, oh my God, you're not serious. You don't really. Oh, that
That's right.
computer's Russian disinformation. Oh, come on. Nobody believed that. Nobody. Yeah, they did all these
Some people
pictures.
believe
They're
this,
deep fakes.
but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
And
Yeah.
when it comes to UFOs and aliens, that's an easy lift. They just go, oh no, you're crazy. We don't know any more about it than you guys, which is not true. They
Mhm.
already know more about it. Now, they may not all know about it, so that gives them plausible deniability. I'm sure a lot of people in Congress, this is the first time they've heard about it because they're deep in building bridges and getting, monies for their projects and stuff. And they were looking at UFOs. They're going, oh, damn, do they really have this stuff? Oh my God. That's really because what we're talking about here is the nature of reality. It's like going like, well, you know what? After all these years, we just want to tell you the Earth really is flat. It's not round. We've been hiding this from you for centuries. It's really flat. That's how groundbreaking this is. To say that, yeah, for decades we've known that aliens have been visiting this planet and interacting with us. We even have physical proof of it, but we've hidden this reality from you for a century. That's the mind-blowing thing, that the average person doesn't know that it has this false reality pulled down over their eyes. They were totally alone. We're the only creatures in 400 billion stars,
Right.
and no one's ever been here before. And anybody that sees anything is nuts.
Well,
And for
it's
every
going to end at some
different
point.
individual, it's going to take a different
Mm.
type of proof. I have a friend of mine who I shared some of this with, and he was adamant. He says, "Until an alien walks up to me and shakes my hand, I won't believe it." And for some people, that's the kind of proof they're going to have to be living next door to one before they believe it.
Mhm.
But that doesn't change reality. There's people that don't believe we landed on the moon. There are people that don't believe the Earth is round. So
Right.
it doesn't make a difference. It's not going to change reality. And we've come so far now that you have to be a little naive to believe that this isn't a real thing. I mean, you
I
got
agree.
they keep telling you don't believe your lying eyes with all these things flying around and almost crashing into military planes. It's happening on a weekly basis. We have all these, photographs and videotape. Despite what people say, they're excellent pictures out there, excellent video out there.
Yes.
Have been for
Yes.
years,
Mhm.
and people just I keep hearing, well, why is this only an American phenomenon? Oh my God, where have you been? This
Exactly.
is not just an American phenomenon, but that's the nature of what's in the general public's realm. So they're just coming onto this now, but it's been going on for decades. And hopefully this year will be a tipping point. And I really do believe we're going to see hearings. That's going to prompt the federal government's hand because they're going to want to get out ahead of the Russians and the Chinese. They don't want them to reveal this and make the Americans look like idiots. They're going to say, yeah,
Yeah.
look what the Americans have been hiding from you all these years. They've been lying to you. Yeah, they knew about this stuff. Hey, we're the honest arbiter here, and everybody come look at our spaceship, and we're going to let you work on it and everything.
Mhm.
Complete, um, disclosure and everything here in Mother Russia, and everybody's going to be beating a path. They don't want that to happen. And so they need to get out ahead of this. And it's a confusing strategy. How will it affect everything? It will affect everything. It will change everything. But they got to get out ahead of it. It's just like anything uncomfortable that you don't want to do. Eventually, you go, okay, I don't want to do this, but we've got to do it. It's too
Mhm.
important. If we leave it alone, it's going to come back and bite us, and we're going to look worse.
All right, let's end it. This is a good place to end this part of this conversation. Uh, it's going to be interesting. We're coming to a moment, a year of maybe a major decision. that is a pivot. It sounds like what you believe is going to be a pivot from emphasis on maintaining the cover up indefinitely to a decision that we're going to have to get out ahead of this and control the process, limit the disclosure, all of which I can believe. The only question that's going to be up for grabs, and we're going to have to find out how this works out, is how effective it will be to maintain a tight control over that disclosure without losing even more credibility. So will we get to an avalanche effect? I've often wondered this. 13 years ago, I co-authored a book on disclosure, and our assessment was that a major breakthrough of information would very likely cause a kind of avalanche where everyone would kind of pile on. And we have not yet gotten to that point. But what you're describing, Allan, makes me wonder that this could be a year where something like that happens, and then therefore there would be a major effort to control that avalanche by those individuals in power to the best extent possible. And if that's the case, we will have to see how well they do. Are we at a tipping point?
That's my belief. And I'm not boasting, but I've been tasked over the years in my private career to do intelligence analysis, looking at the data points and thinking what's the most likely thing to happen next. And I have to say I've been, I'm proud to say I've been pretty successful in connecting those data points and saying, yeah, I think I can see this is where this is going and this is likely to happen. And I've been proven pretty accurate. And I
think
believe that's what we're going to see.
Your assessment here doesn't seem illogical to me. I mean, there's a good point there. So the raid will be if there's a raid in the early part of this or any point this year, I will. I'm going to bring you on here and we're going to talk about that, because that will be.
The only thing that would be a caveat to that is if they volunteered. If Lockheed volunteers, makes a public outing
to avoid
because they wanted to get rid of it. They were just afraid to, and they could all say, okay, we're going to go to the mics and say, hey, yeah, we're giving this stuff to the American government. We're sorry. We don't want to be involved anymore. That's one other thing. But my guess is they're too afraid to give it up, as they've shown, and someone's going to have to go in and get it, and they will. They will go in and get it.
Somehow I don't see this happening, but I'm glad you're bringing this up because it's an important perspective and it could be true. So all right, we'll leave it there. Allan LaVigne, it's always a pleasure getting together with you, and I know that we're going to do this again in the course of the coming year. Oh, absolutely. The pleasure's mine, and I know listeners, I have no doubt they've enjoyed this. So, we're living in a time in which people really want to know what is going on with UAP disclosure. So, and it's difficult sometimes to know. There's lots of people out there, lots of opinions. Some have said, the failure of the act to have any real teeth is a disaster. It's been gutted. But others, such as yourself, see a silver lining. And I think it's very important to recognize that as well. So we'll leave it there. I want to thank everyone for being here with us. If you like this video, please support me by hitting the like button, by subscribing to my channel. And of course, go over to richarddolanmembers.com, where there's a lot of action going on there every week. Lots of members, including Allan LaVigne, are there. And we've got an open forum, monitored forum, and also a